Welcome to Growth and Inspire, where we examine topics that make us feel inspired and grow. I'm your host, Bonnie Yam, and today we will be discussing topics that has a meaningful impact on how you monitor your 401k plan. Our speaker today is Ari Rosenbaum. He is an ERISA retirement plan attorney. I've known Ari for a very long time. He is one of the most prolific attorneys and has a deep understanding in all aspects of retirement planning. Hello, Ari. So,
Hi.
so happy to have you on our podcast. Before we start, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and your company?
I've been an ERISA attorney for over 26 years now, and I've had my own practice, the Rosenbaum Law Firm, for almost 15 years now. I help plan sponsors and plan providers in working with all qualified and non-qualified retirement plans. Both plan sponsors, it's kind of they call me when something's broken. I'm Mr. Fix It when it comes to retirement plans and putting out fires, but also putting in procedures and policies to kind of avoid plan sponsors landing in trouble.
Yeah, it's pretty complex, so you're a great resource to them. All right, so let's just get started. Can you explain what it means to be a fiduciary for 401k plan?
Right. To be a plan fiduciary is essentially in your role as a plan sponsor or as the plan administrator or a trustee, you are responsible for the retirement assets of other people. So being a fiduciary requires the highest duty of care and equity in law because you're responsible for other people's money. What you want to do with your money, you want to waste it, that's your call. But when you are in charge of, the retirement assets of your employees, you have to operate to a higher standard of care.
Yep. So, okay. So can you kind of name what are the key responsibilities of your fiduciary?
Well, overall, to be a fiduciary, you have a duty of prudence. You have to make prudent decisions. You have a duty to pay reasonable plan expenses. And you just have a general overall duty to keep the plan in compliance, whether it's with, filing the Form 5500 with the Department of Labor and the Internal Revenue Service, or just making sure that plan providers are doing their job, or just making sure that plan participants aren't paying unnecessary fees that are unreasonable for the services that are provided.
So basically, you're a representative, like a key representative on the plan that it's being administered well. The fees are in good order, and there are no key violations,
Correct.
design and so forth, right? So, maybe let's just talk a little bit about like, what are the consequences of failing to fulfill your fiduciary duties?
Well, for most larger plans, there's, class action lawsuits. We could look at all these famous companies that we know are being sued because we have ERISA litigators who want a class action lawsuit to get a quick settlement. But for most small to medium sized plans, the biggest worry is compliance issues with the Department of Labor and the Internal Revenue Service. Right now, I have a client referred by a TPA that has a $200,000 penalty because they didn't file a Form 5500 on time. There's always a whole host of compliance issues. Um, right now, I have another issue with a plan sponsor that was given poor advice by one of their plan providers, and I have to get them out of trouble because they put in a plan that they shouldn't have put in because they had a simple plan. So there's so many different ways. It's a retirement plan is kind of like a intricate machine or like a heavy, sophisticated piece of machinery. There's so many things that could go wrong, and that's why you need, as a plan sponsor, to be observant, but to hire the right kind of plan providers to avoid problems. And that's really the difference between a good plan provider and a bad one. The good plan providers are going to help the plan be in compliance and really help the plan sponsors out. And many are people who are just, obviously not sophisticated enough in the retirement plan space to manage the plan on their own.
Review, plan fees, all that stuff, right? Yeah. But I'm surprised, $200,000 just to like fail. the deadline of filing for
Yeah, the reason for that is it's Department of Labor has it's something like $3,700 a day in penalties, and it's not capped. The Internal Revenue Service penalties on the 5500s tend to be capped, and because of these voluntary compliance programs that allow plan sponsors to file late and come to the government and fix it, that's why the penalties increase. Because if you didn't use that program that they want, they're going to sock you with penalties. So that's why there's an incentive for plan sponsors to seek out plan providers and fix these problems before the government discovers it.
Well, later on, can you share a little bit more in depth details about about that?
Sure.
That's crazy, $3,700. Um, so what about some best practices? How do you stay compliant? So what are the key errors that you see all the time?
Well, I think the biggest key error is because you have a plan sponsor that just, has a kind of set it and forget it mentality, to their retirement plan. They treat a retirement plan like other employee benefits, like a discount at the gym, at the gymnasium or whatever, or something that they get from the credit union. Being a plan sponsor means, again, you're a fiduciary, so you have to have the highest duty of care in law. You can't just have a plan and set it up and just forget about it, because the demographics of your company changes, but most importantly, um, investments change. Like, for example, I worked at a law firm where they didn't review the investments for 10 years.
You
And I
got
was trying to explain to them, that's a problem, especially when forget the fact that you had ERISA practice and you had these ERISA law partners. You needed to have a financial advisor to pick out funds. And I'm like, these funds, this looked like what was popular 10 years ago. And it turns out they didn't, review the funds for a 10-year period.
yeah.
And just because participants direct their own investments doesn't mean that the plan sponsor is totally immune from liability for losses sustained by plan participants. So it just really runs a gamut. But really, if you have a plan sponsor just doesn't think about their retirement plan and just doesn't review it and doesn't have plan providers that are really on top of them to make sure that everything is compliant, this is where you're going to get into trouble.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
this is
yeah.
where, yeah,
I agree. Like particularly, when you start, the plan is very small. So, maybe it's a 1% is reasonable, but when your plan size go from $1 to $10 million, 1% is a lot of money. So, you need to check on that.
I had a plan. I always talk to people say, well, what's your craziest story? I said, well, the craziest story I ever had was I had a medical practice that had a defined benefit plan, and they had $3 million, and they invested all $3 million with a financial advisor by the name of Bernie Madoff.
Oh my God.
And forget the fact that Madoff lost the money. Forget the fact that they didn't have an ERISA bond to protect against theft. The fact that it is that the defined benefit plan worked great when there were like 3 or 4 employees, but no longer work when they had 12.
Boy.
And that happens again when you have a plan sponsor that's too busy and forgets about it, but also not having the right plan providers who could tell them, you know what, this plan doesn't really work out for you anymore. How about a 401k plan? And that's what we did. And they've been my clients ever since. And I think the Madoff story broke around 2009. They've been my clients ever since. It's about 16 years. So
How,
that's,
that's
yeah.
great. How do you find out red flags? Like, okay, so I forgot to pay my fiduciary insurance. It's like, I should be paying a higher amount because my asset size go. Who's gonna tap on your door and say, hey, look, please check. How do you find out?
If you don't have if you don't have a good plan provider like yourself, like a financial advisor or a third party administrator, you only hear about these things when you get
Get
audited
in
by the
trouble.
government. There's no fun in getting audited
Oh,
by
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
government, especially the Department of Labor. There are very few things in life that I'm afraid of, and aside from heights and dangerous amusement park rides, the only thing I fear is the Department of Labor audit, just
Yeah,
because we don't know what they're looking for, and it could be
yeah, yeah.
someone complaining about a benefit that they were entitled to. It could be it expensive. We don't know what it is, and if you have a plan sponsor that is diligent,
Hmm.
then we tend to not have major issues
And
in a DOL or an IRS audit.
How do they decide who to audit? Just roll the dice or,
A part of it is random, but a part of it is also answering the wrong answers on a 5500, being
uh,
incorrect. Like, so for example, if you don't have the requisite ERISA bonds
mm,
and you answer that you
yes,
don't because
I
you're
know.
answering under penalties of perjury, voila, don't be surprised to get audited.
Mm.
But even something, one time I had an audit, it was really perceptive of the IRS. They checked the 5500 employer contribution versus the deduction that the employer took for a contribution on the 1120, the form 1120, which is the corporate return, and there was a discrepancy, and that was the
That
basis of an
triggers it.
audit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. When you file a tax return, the two numbers don't match up. So what's
yeah.
going on? Where's the money? Well, I think it's very complex. You talk about the plan fees, about all the insurance and filing it regularly, on time. Otherwise, you get lots of penalty. And then other things, and if you don't do the fiduciary and plan review, and after a while the plan cost is like completely out of range, so you start hearing some of these calls, and somebody reporting.
Right now, the biggest error, the two biggest errors that I see with retirement plans that are just daily errors. Plan sponsors not putting in the deferrals as quickly as
Oh,
possible, um,
I hear
because
that.
that was
I hear
they had this belief that you needed to do it by the 15th day of the following month, which we know that is no longer the case. And number two, I see a lot of problems with the definition of compensation, where the employer thinks the compensation includes one thing or doesn't include one thing, and it's inconsistent with what the plain document says. So they may disallow people from deferring on a bonus, or they may not give an employer contribution on a bonus or overtime, and they were incorrect about it, and they may owe an additional contribution.
Yep.
You know,
Yep, those are very technical stuff. You definitely need a good staff to make sure that check on these little errors, make sure you're in compliance.
sure.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so I think you shared a lot of great information. Ari, I'm pretty sure other people had some other questions. And how do they reach out to you? Can you share, what's the best way?
Sure. It's email us Ari, ARY at the rosenbaumlawfirm.com, or go to the rosenbaumlawfirm.com, or even check me out. Most of my articles and advice and all that is on a website called jdsupra.com,
Yeah, there's a lot of good information.
jdsupra.com.
Yes,
That's housed my articles for almost the last 15 years.
fantastic.
And on all social media, Facebook, Twitter, and all that stuff.
So when I get a letter that I don't know what to do from IRS, I'll give you a call, right?
I've had that. I recently had that with a company that is at the Bronx Terminal Market, and again, they had one of those late
Great filing.
filings, and they didn't use that delinquent filing program, and there was a surprise of a $75,000 penalty.
Yeah.
And for a small business, that is a
Crazy.
crippling
Yeah. So the
it's a
cash flow is
crippling
gone.
penalty, right?
What did you say this? Can you say it again? What is the thing that you're supposed to file if you're late? The
If
delinquent?
you are, yeah, if you are late,
Uh,
you have to file 5500 at the same time you're filing with Department of Labor's delinquent filing voluntary compliance program. And by doing that, you pay like a small penalty. I think the maximum is about $3,000 for all years. And that's a lot cheaper
a
than,
lot,
a
lot cheaper.
$200,000 penalty from the Department of Labor.
Yeah.
And, if you're working with your third party administrator and you check the box that it's part of the delinquent program, and you go online at the same time you pay the government, it's gonna save you from a lot of headaches, but most importantly,
Pathetic.
it's gonna save you from six or nine digit, well, six digit,
Absolutely, man.
penalties. Yeah.
That's the biggest stuff that I learned today. The delinquency filing. Yeah, okay. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time, and thank you for watching today's podcast. So till next time, let's keep learning. Thank you very much.